Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and we're back with another edition of Bad Teachers, and I'm continuing the deep dive into bad teacher Brittany Fortinberry. Now, the last time that I left you, Brittany Fortinberry showed up at the sheriff's office for her interview, and based on that, police attempted to get a search warrant for her arrest. But due to the lack of hard evidence, it was denied. So they continued the investigation in an effort to gain more evidence and get this girl arrested if she indeed did all these things these kids were saying. So let's go to December 10th of 2024, and a detective at the Morgan County Sheriff's Office just so happened to be at the county prosecutor's office on an unrelated case when he was informed someone was in the lobby and they wanted to speak to someone regarding Brittany Fortinberry. So the detective, he meets with the grandmother of who I'm going to refer to as victim number 3. And she says victim number 3, who was her grandson, had told her about some sexual acts that occurred between himself and Brittany about a year prior. So the detective says, "Can you meet me with your grandson so we can discuss this the following day?" To which the grandmother agrees to do. So on December 11th of 2024, the grandmother and victim number 3 arrive at the sheriff's office, and the detective performs a formal interview. Now, before I go any further, although by this point Brittany has not been arrested, everyone in Martinsville, Indiana knew she was under investigation. And if you went to school there, there's a good chance that your parents, grandparents, what have you, they were going to ask you about it, which is what occurred here. And it's how this grandmother ended up going to police. According to the formal interview notes, the grandmother asked her grandson if he had heard about Brittany Fortinberry's troubles, let's say, and asked him if he knew why she would be investigated. And victim number 2 responded with, quote, "I heard she was doing something on the internet." The grandmother then point blank asked victim number 3, her grandson, if Brittany molested him. And his response, shockingly to her, was yes. And he continued to say it wasn't the only time either. The grandmother said victim number 3 went on to say he felt weird about it and that he was given psychedelic mushrooms from Brittany and then started having sex with her. The grandmother told the detective it started out with Brittany sending nude photos to the boys and then escalated from there. She said when it all started, victim number 3 was just 15 years old. She went on to say that Brittany told her grandson, as well as other boys, that if they told anyone what was going on, she would, quote, kill herself. The grandmother said the occurrences would happen at Brittany Fortinberry's house typically. Now, Brittany was no stranger to this grandmother. They knew each other well, and she told police she trusted Brittany, that she would bring her grandson clothes and shoes and things like that. But she had a strange feeling about Brittany and mentioned that when Brittany would come over, she would always have a bunch of boys with her. Now, this aspect, if you're like me, you're thinking, why the fuck would anyone not think it was weird that a grown-ass woman was hanging around often and buying gifts for 15-year-old boys? I can't make any sense of it, so I'm not even going to try. But consider this a red flag, parents. Grown-ass adults hanging out with high school kids is never a good thing. So in the interview, the detective mentions that the grandmother kept alluding to other victims, and that one of them in particular was supposed to come in and meet with the detective. The detective then asked if he could have victim number 3's cell phone so he could clone it for evidence, to which that grandmother agreed. So at this point in the investigation, everything got out, right? Remember, victim number 1 and victim number 2, there were no accusations of sex, only inappropriate text, maybe some pictures, but this investigation just went from a 6 to a 10 now that sex is involved. So the detective then speaks directly with victim number 3, and victim number 3 tells the detective that just a week prior to this detective speaking to him, that Brittany added him on Snapchat, which she knows that she's under investigation at this point. And to me, this speaks volumes on how sick and twisted this chick is. Victim number 3 tells the detective that he met Brittany through his friend. They started hanging out, and one day he was sitting in Brittany's son's bedroom with another kid. And okay, before we go any further, it gets pretty graphic from here in regards to language and details. So there's your warning. So his friend, who was with him in Brittany's son's bedroom, stated to victim number 3 that he needed to, quote, get some pussy. Victim number 3 responds with, what do you mean? To which his friend says, we can fuck Brittany. He then went on to tell the victim that, quote, Brittany liked it. He said that prior to this conversation, Brittany would send him Snapchat nudes. He told the detective nothing occurred that day outside of the conversation with his friend, and the next morning he went back to Brittany's house because he did his school online. He didn't go to regular school. And that he was in Brittany's bed trying to take a nap. I know, unbelievable. And Brittany leans over and asked him to cuddle with her. Now, he said it was weird because she was, quote, touching his shit, exact words, and that she was high as hell. He admitted to, quote, fucking Brittany 2 or 3 times, but others would do it more, and that she would give him and the other boys shrooms so they would be tripping during the sex. He also mentioned that she would get mad at him when he would do the shrooms because he could not get, quote, hard. When the detective pressed him harder on the cuddling situation that victim number 3 mentioned, the victim said Brittany would grab his, quote, dick and stroke it up and down in his pants. And then he mentioned she had heard that, quote, skinny guys had big dicks, unquote, and could she see his? So they ended up having sex. He then mentioned on another occasion, he and his friend were at Brittany's and there was a big bottle of lube in the bedroom. And Brittany asked them both to do something sexual with her. So he and his friend, quote, and this is his words, fisted her. He then goes into another instance with Brittany where he said he and 2 friends were at her house and she wanted them to gang bang her. He said they all did shrooms and that she was getting mad at him because the other 2 friends were screwing her and he could not get it up. He said she started yelling at him and then tried to give him a blowjob, but he could not get hard. So the detective then asked victim number 3 if he could describe some things about Brittany that someone may not know unless they saw her nude. And this is common. This is a way to provide evidence that all this shit actually happened, right? And victim number 3 said she had her, quote, coochie lips cut off. According to victim number 3, he knew this because Brittany had mentioned on a trip to French Lick, Indiana, which incidentally is the home of Larry Bird, y'all, that she could not have sex because she had just had her coochie lips cut off. Some of the other things he mentioned worth noting. He said that Brittany and her husband had an open marriage, that Brittany had sex with between 5 and 10 of his friends, all underage. He was able to provide some very descriptive, accurate details regarding the layout of the interior of Brittany's home. All of the things, right? So police get this information. They're working new leads that came out of victim number 3's interview. And on February 24th of 2025, yet another parent comes forward. The detective interviews her, and this parent said that she used to be friends with Brittany in 2022, during the time this mother was going through a divorce. She said that Brittany was very helpful with the kids, but that she started to notice Brittany's relationship with one of her kids appeared to be different than that of her two other kids. She said Brittany would buy things for whom I'm going to refer to as victim number 4. And she said Brittany would buy him things often. Eventually, this mother became very uncomfortable and she decided to end that friendship with Brittany. And it was after this that Brittany started reaching out to her son, victim number 4, on Snapchat. The mother discovered this and she told her son to block Brittany. However, she said that her son continued chatting with Brittany on another app, but she couldn't recall the name of that app. So when everything came out regarding the investigation into Brittany Fortinberry, the mother said she told her son he needed to be 100% honest with her as to whether anything transpired with Brittany. And victim number 4 said yes, that Brittany had sent him nude pictures and videos of her using vibrators, videos of her having threesomes with other men. He went on to tell his mother that on 2 occasions, Brittany had drugged him with shrooms and weed and would bribe him and the other victims to not tell about this by buying them vape pens. The mother said her son told her that Brittany would have a bunch of kids in her house while she was being gangbanged and make the ones that did not participate watch from the doorway. The mother said on one occasion that Brittany picked him and a friend up, went back to her house where she and the victim went into the garage and had sex. And get this, he even showed his mother a video Brittany sent him where she is taking victim number 4's boxers, which he apparently left at her house, and was shoving them inside her vagina in this video. Another video he showed his mother was of Brittany masturbating to the victim's school pictures. Absolutely fucking disgusting. She also told the detective that Brittany's husband knew about everything that was going on and that he threatened to, quote, slaughter victim number 4 if he ever talked about it. So at this point, the detective interviews her son, victim number 4, and he said he first met Brittany when he was 13. And at the time of the interview, y'all, he was only 14. He said he was in the 7th grade when he met her and her son, who was in the 6th grade. So he would spend the night a lot at her house with her son, which was a 6th grader at that point. He confirmed everything that his mother told the detective, so I'm not going to rehash that, but he added some other things, saying she would give the boy shrooms and put on porn movies and then get on top of them. He said the first time he was ever sexual with her, she would have him play with her boobs and rub her on the bed. He also said a few months later, Brittany took him and another friend out to eat and told victim number 4 to tell his friend that she, quote, wanted to fuck him. He refused, and he said Brittany just came out and asked the friend herself. He said when they got back to her house, she brought his friend into the bedroom, made victim number 4 follow them and actually watch them while they had sex. He said after about 30 minutes of that, they got dressed and she took them to Waffle House. On another occasion, she brought number 4 and 2 of his friends to the mall. He said at the mall, she bought them $600 worth of shoes. She then called the parents of the kids and they allowed these kids to spend the night with her. I mean, I can't even. What the fuck is up with these parents? But I'll move on. So at the house, they all do shrooms. And 30 minutes into a movie, Brittany asked his friends if they wanted to gangbang her. So the friends, they said, sure. And she went on to say, get this shit. There is one condition if you gangbang me. You have to wear a scream mask. And she pulls out scream mask for these boys to wear. He said all three of them gangbanged her. And I know this is descriptive, y'all, but it's in the report and I don't censor my podcast. At this point, the 15-year-old boy said one of us would fuck her while the other was getting head from her, and a third is using one of her husband's sex toys while he waited. And I'll leave it up to you to determine what type of toy the third in that gangbang was using that would have been her husband's. But you can probably figure it out. He said they went on in rotation and would rotate every 15 minutes. And this went on for around 2 hours. So if you do the math, that means each one got 4 turns in each position. So keep in mind, this occurred the year prior, meaning this kid was 14 at the time of this particular gangbang. He then went on to say that on August 17th of 2024, he had his last incident with Brittany occur. He said Brittany asked him if he and his friend wanted to come to her house. Now, y'all, this is after the investigation started. She knew police were investigating her. The kid and his friend agree, and she takes them to get vape pens and a bunch of food. He said when they got to her house, she made the friend wait in the car. He said she then disconnected the camera in the garage and took him into the garage and locked the door. He said she then gave him a clear drink and told him to drink it, which he did. And he said he got real dizzy. He felt like he was floating. He said Brittany sat him into a chair, pulled down his pants, and he said the last thing he remembered was Brittany putting his penis into her and bouncing up and down for like 5 minutes. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that victim number 4's mom had said Brittany's husband knew all about this. And the detective, he wanted to know more about that, of course. So we asked victim number 4 about it. And victim number 4 said that he and a friend went to Brittany's house one day to get groceries at Walmart. And when they got back, Brittany's husband comes outside and tells them to go into the kitchen and sit down. So they do that. Her husband's a firefighter, incidentally. The husband then proceeds to tell them if they ever tell anyone, he will, quote, slaughter them in front of their family. And victim number 4 identified her husband as Nick Fortinberry. So when the detective asked about how they primarily communicated, the kids said it was through an app called Session, which here in South Louisiana, I had not heard about this. But the kid tells the detective it's an app where you download it and the person wanting to chat with you sends you a code. And you key that code in and it brings you into a private chat room, which is just what the freaking world needs, right? Another app making it easy for pedophiles. So armed with this information and another victim's name, the very next day, which was February 25th of 2025, the detective speaks with the parent of who I'm going to call victim number 5. Again, the detective conducts a formal interview with the mother first, and the mother told the detective that her child was friends with victim number 4, and they had been friends for over 4 years, and they played sports together, they hung out together, just very, very good friends. And if you're a parent, you'll understand this. But usually when your kids have other kids that are very good friends, us as parents, we typically become friends with the parents of those kids. And that's what happened in this case. So the mother of victim number 4, of course, when this all went down, she shared all that information with victim number 5's mother. And victim number 5's mother, she started doing some investigating of her own. and she discovered that Brittany was going to baseball games with the boys as well as picking the boys up from their house. And she mentioned to the detective that her son had some information on something that happened to him in August of 2024. So the detective interviews victim number 5, and he just flat out spilled the beans on Brittany. He told the detective about her sending nude photos, giving the children vapes. He said that she would make a group chat with victim number 4 and himself and just send a flurry of pictures being at a lake without a shirt on. She would send him pictures of her on a stripper pole and even pictures of her using sex toys. He said she would send videos of her dancing on that stripper pole and using sex toys on herself. And he did talk specifically about a night where Brittany picked him up in his neighborhood in the middle of the night, along with victim number 4. And in that story, he pretty much corroborated everything victim number 4 had said about this particular situation, which was the one where Brittany brought victim number 4 to her house and made someone else wait in the car. Well, that was victim number 5. He said that he had to wait approximately an hour and that it occurred between 1 and 3 a.m. So obviously they snuck out of their house to meet with her. And a strange thing that he said was that Brittany dropped him back off in his neighborhood that night, and she told him she loved him. And this kid, y'all, at this point was in middle school. So the kid went on to tell the detective about a video he had received on Snapchat of Brittany having sex with her husband, Nicholas Fortinberry. He said that after she sent the video, a text came across the screen that said, quote, "I wish you were having sex with me right now," unquote. I mean, can you believe this shit? So they talked for a few more minutes, and then he concluded his interview with victim number 5. So after all this, police have enough, and they arrest Brittany Fortinberry the next day. This was March 4th of 2025. And that same day, the detective interviews Brittany's ex-husband and his current wife. And it's important to note that Brittany and her ex-husband, they shared a child together. So the ex-husband, he tells the detective that he's had a lot of problems out of Brittany's current husband, Nick Fortinberry, and that he even made a report to the Department of Child Services regarding the treatment that his son would tell him about from his stepfather. He alleged abuse. And he also put in that Department of Child Family Services report that Nicholas Fortinberry was growing mushrooms in the residence. Now, I don't know if he saw that or if his son told him about that, but he let the detective know it was all in that DCS report. Now, in that report, it tells of a situation where Brittany had locked this child, her son, out of the home, and he had to sleep inside a garage. And it's noted in that report that the child was banging on the door, trying to get in and could not, and that the garage is detached. It's not connected to the house, and there was no bathroom in that garage. The report also noted that Nicholas Fortinberry is an angry drunk and mentions an incident where Nicholas ripped off a rear view mirror on Brittany's vehicle and at one point was kicking in the dashboard. And the report also noted that Brittany had to remove herself from the home whenever Nicholas drank because he was, quote, a very violent drunk. Then the ex-husband tells the detective about another incident. And he said his babysitter told him about it. So apparently and allegedly, when Brittany's child was just 2 years old, a babysitter was watching that child and another boy. And that Brittany's child was playing with cars like kids will do, these little small Hot Wheels. And he's rolling the cars up and down the other boy's back. And the babysitter noticed him doing that. And she said, "Stop doing that. You might hurt the other boy. Why are you doing that?" And Brittany's child's response was, quote, "Toys go into your bottom," unquote. So the babysitter asked why he thought that. And he said, and this is so disturbing, but he said, "Mommy put a fire truck in his bottom." Now, all that's allegedly, but according to this ex-husband, that's what he was told. So upon the ex-husband finding out about this, he did bring the 2-year-old to the doctor. And the doctor noted the child's rectum was what he classified as mildly irritated. I mean, shocking and disgusting, right? So at this point, we've got 5 victims. And it doesn't stop there. The same day, the detective interviews another parent and another victim. And we'll talk about the parent first. That parent said that she had been noticing some red flags of Brittany for a while. She said she noticed Brittany had added her son on Snapchat, started asking her son about it, and her son admitted that Brittany had given him shrooms. Now, the mom said that her son told her they had never had sex, meaning him and Brittany, but she basically says, "You're going to have to talk to him and find out for sure. And we're going to refer to this as victim number 6. Victim number 6 stated that he knew Brittany was a teacher and that he had heard of her even before she became a teacher. And keep in mind, y'all, she had only been a teacher at this point for 1 semester before all this went down. So the victim continued on, and he said the kids talked about her even before she became a teacher because they all kind of thought she was hot. Now, his freshman year of high school is when Brittany became his math teacher. And at that time, he was 15. Apparently, they had some sort of pool that she hung out with a lot that was just for the entire community. He said he would see her there. They would talk, and she was grooming him, right? Befriending him, making him another victim. He mentioned a time where 2 other boys, as well as himself and Brittany, went back to her house, and he said they were messing around. So the detective says, "Okay, you were at her house, describe it for me." And of course, he describes both the interior and exterior to a T, just like all these other kids were able to do. He said he can't remember everything, but he did mention that there was a downstairs bedroom with a big box of dildos in a drawer. And he also said that Brittany would give him mushrooms and that he kind of looked at her as a drug dealer. He said she was basically dealing drugs to a lot of kids. He said he would notice that Brittany would be very flirtatious with him, but would never directly say anything to him. I could tell she was flirting. He even mentioned one time that he had called Brittany to ask for money, and while on a video call with her, she just randomly pulls her tits out. So in this case, the victim did not actually have sex with Brittany, or at least he never admitted to it, but the detective did get a lot of other information out of him, and the detective ends the interview. And I probably need to note right here, by the time in this investigation, DCS was contacting every parent at this school saying, if your kid had anything to do with Brittany Fortinberry, we want to talk to them. And so this particular day, it was like a revolving door in this detective's office with parent after parent showing up. And yet another parent and victim did show up that day. Apparently, the mother had said her son had been helping Brittany at the school, and a friendship developed of some sort, and Brittany was taking her child and other kids to baseball games and concerts. And she said she thought everything was on the up and up until one day Brittany showed up at the house to pick up her son, and she had on a little tight dress, no bra, and incidentally, I've seen some pictures of Brittany. I actually uploaded several to the Patreon. And to tell you about this girl's style, she's got H cup size boobs with no bra on, and she has a pierced nipple, which you can see right through her shirts that she wears, which is how you can tell she doesn't have a bra on. So this mother sees that, and you're hanging around a bunch of 40-year-olds. That's one thing. 30-year-olds, even maybe 25-year-olds. But when you're hanging around children, a little bit inappropriate, right? So Brittany goes to pick this kid up. Her mother sees that, and she gets that gut feeling, right, that something was wrong here and not on the up and up. So when her kid gets home, she tells her kid, "You're not hanging out with Brittany Fortinberry anymore." Then when everything came out, she went to her kid and asked him if Brittany had ever tried to sleep with him or anything. The kid said no, and her mother wasn't sure either way if he was being honest. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I think the same thing. Throughout all of this, what were these parents thinking? I'm not blaming them, but come on, who allows their kids to do this? She said a week later, after her son stopped hanging with Brittany and the other kids, she found out that prior to Brittany teaching at the high school, she was a stripper. So my point to all this is, in this investigation, everybody in Martinsville knew this shit was going on. I mean, Martinsville is not a gigantic city. It's not a Chicago-sized town. And I mean, it's safe to say, as I was researching this and going through this, I'm thinking this is the most disturbing episode I've ever done of any subject. And it gets worse. So as I told you, at this point in the investigation, Brittany was arrested. Police gathered enough evidence to arrest her, and it was shortly thereafter that yet another victim and mother come in. So as is his procedure, the detective talks with the mother first and then the victim. And how this particular interview came about was the mother saw some stuff on Facebook about Brittany's case. Now, remember, at this point, she has been arrested, so it's all over social media. The mother saw this, and of course, she knew that her son hung around Brittany, so she starts asking him, "Did you sleep with her?" And of course, the son denies this. However, she tells the detective a couple of weeks later, he walked up to his mom and dad, and we're going to call him victim number 7, and he said he had slept with Brittany and had been sleeping with Brittany pretty much since day one of knowing her. So his parents dig further into this admission, and they discover that one day he's at Brittany's house and another victim asked him if he wanted to have sex with Brittany if he could, like if he had the chance to. And he responded with yes. And that's been the MO throughout this whole deal. That's what Brittany does. She gets other kids to ask whether so-and-so will sleep with her. She doesn't do it herself, typically. So he said that same evening, she comes out in a nightgown and bends over to get something. And he said it kind of started and went from there. And I'm guessing he made a comment when she bent over, and that was all it took. He went on to tell his parents that Brittany had slept with him and at least 10 other boys, and also added that Brittany would get him vapes, weed, edibles, etc. And he also told his parents she refused to get them alcohol. And that just struck me as strange. I mean, she's against getting them drunk, but she'll get them high as fuck. It's just crazy. So the mother said a couple of days after her son had told her and his father about this, the Department of Child Services called. And apparently through all of this is how the interview got set up with the detective. So the detective speaks to victim number 7, and he discusses that he was friends with another victim and that he would go over to the boy's house a lot, and said he didn't know a whole lot about Brittany, except for the other victim would refer to Brittany as his aunt. He went on to tell the detective that one night he stayed over at the other victim's house, and it was during the sleepover that they went over to Brittany's house. He said he was playing basketball outside with his buddies, and they all went inside, and he said that's the first time he knew something wasn't right, because Brittany changes into what he described as very revealing nightgown. He said they were sitting on the couch and Brittany bent over to get something, and she didn't have any panties on, and her vagina was completely exposed. So in the probable cause affidavit, it doesn't mention that anything else occurred. I'm going to assume nothing else did this particular night except a bunch of hints by Brittany. But then he gets into the next weekend where he said he was at Brittany's, and that was when his buddy asked him, hey, if you could have sex with Brittany, would you? And he said, sure, he would. And he said that's where it all started. Brittany started sending him nude pictures after that. And about a month later, just him and another friend were hanging out at Brittany's house. And it's really bizarre, y'all, that they have all these sleepovers at her house. And she would call the parents in a lot of these cases herself to make sure it was okay. That's just crazy to me. I can't fucking wrap my mind around it. But this is what occurred. So moving on, this is one of these situations. Victim number 7 said he and his friend slept in Brittany's bed. And he said the friend was on one side of the bed, he was in the middle, and Brittany was on the other side of the bed. He said Brittany had a nightgown on without any underwear and told him it was okay if he touched her. So he said, okay, and he touched her. He clarified to the detective, and here's where it gets graphic, y'all. He said he, quote, fingered her for about 5 or 10 minutes. He then said Brittany turned to him and whispered in his ear, quote, please fuck me. He agreed, and at this time, according to the victim, he was 14 years old. So while he's doing all of this, he said his friend, who was also in the bed, he wakes up. And victim number 7 said the look on his friend's face was like shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. But he said, I just continued having sex with Brittany and my friend went back to sleep. He then told the detective that they finished having sex and he started talking about Brittany giving them shrooms and hitting weed pens, etc. So apparently she got them high, as is her MO, before they had sex. As a matter of fact, he described himself as not being fully coherent because of that. He said he got out of the bed and he had to go to the restroom. And when he came back, his buddy, who was asleep, was now awake and having sex with Brittany. He said he just went to sleep after that. In another incident, he said it was just him and Brittany, but one of her sons was in the room at the end of the bed on the couch. He said the couch pulled out into another bed. So he said that Brittany's son wanted to stay in the room with them, and he said he laid on the couch while Brittany's son was watching TV. Her son fell asleep, so he gets into the bed with Brittany, and Brittany asked him to have sex with her. So they did that. And her son was in the room the whole time. And y'all, that is a whole new level of fucked up. And as is consistent with everybody else that has reported to this detective, he discussed how Brittany had a drawer that was full of dildos and that he and his buddy would use those on her. He even talked about how Brittany would buy him all kinds of stuff. And she did this with everybody, right? She bought them iPhones, shoes, food. And this kid was smart enough to figure out this was actually like a bribe to keep his mouth shut. And he said he felt as though she was trying to buy his silence. He then tells of a situation where she had brought him into a baseball facility to get baseball lessons, and she had to pay for those. When the lessons were over, she had told him she had to have oral sex with the guy in the back of the baseball facility to pay for those lessons. Now, that's alleged. I don't have any direct knowledge, obviously, but that's what this kid said in the affidavit. As a matter of fact, that kid also said that Brittany told him she had sex with a, quote, black dude in Bloomington, Indiana, for a pair of shoes for another victim. In those cases, those were adults she was having sex with, but kind of swapping favors there with even adults. Gives you an idea of what her limits were, right? She didn't have limits. That's the point. He also told the detective about another time that he and his friend went to Brittany's and Brittany was on her knees in a doggy style position having sex. And he said that Brittany's youngest son walked in the room and it freaked out her youngest son, obviously, but that Brittany didn't care. She didn't even stop. You can't make this shit up. He then discussed that he would receive nude photos and pictures primarily through Snapchat and that app I told you about last episode called Sessions. And of course, every time she would send anything through either one of those apps, it was on disappearing mode. He said that Brittany would send pictures of her boob and her ass and playing with herself. And he said she would use toys in her hand in the videos, pretty much everything we discussed with past victims. He also said there was one time Brittany filmed herself giving him, meaning victim number 7, a blowjob. And he said he saw the video multiple times after she filmed it. And he thinks it was just one time that she filmed him and her in any sort of sex type situation, but he saw her put that video on a folder marked "For My Eyes Only" in Snapchat. So when she films herself, when these kids, y'all, now she's making child porn on top of everything else. I mean, this is a 14-year-old kid. And he said at one point he actually got a hold of Brittany's phone and he and a friend were scrolling through it. And there were nudes everywhere. And then the detective asked him to estimate how many times he had sex with Brittany. And he said 10 to 15 times. He said most of the times he and a buddy would take turns with her. And he went on to say the most recent event that occurred with Brittany was when Brittany took her 2 sons and him to a water park. And apparently Brittany sent him nudes while they were there. And he described them as full body nudes in the shower of that water park. And I mean, this guy knew it all. And he even shared with the detective that Brittany had a labia reduction, which of course was consistent with other victims. He also told the detective of a situation where he and another friend of Brittany's were hitting a weed pen at Brittany's house in the upstairs of her home. And he said that Brittany came upstairs to grab something. And he said, I asked her if we could, quote, finger her, which they did. And he said they did that for 5 or 10 minutes, taking turns. So the detective asked him if Brittany's husband, Nick, knew anything about this. And he said Nick definitely knew because they weren't allowed to go to the house for a while after Nick found out what was going on. This kid was descriptive. He even went into describing the dildo, saying one was in the shape of a hand and it was huge, and that the dildo's size ranged. And the one that was in the shape of a hand was her favorite because she, quote, liked getting fisted. I mean, this shit right here. He did also tell the detective that every time he had sex with Brittany, he was either taking shrooms, edibles, or hitting a weed pen. I mean, this girl is the female version of Sean Diddy Combs, assuming these allegations are all true. So that interview wraps up, and it wasn't long before yet another parent and victim show up, and this is how that went down. The father in this case showed up, and he told the detective that his son went to school where Brittany taught, and they became friends after her son stuck up for another student. Brittany apparently complimented him for standing up to a bully and gave him like a stuffed animal you would get from a fair or something. The dad apparently asked victim number 8, we're going to call him that, after DCS contacted him if he had ever had sex with Brittany. And he said, yeah, he had inappropriate relationships with Brittany, but he was very vague on what they were. Apparently, he told his dad Brittany had sent him some pictures and a video, but he was real uncomfortable going into detail about it. And you can understand why. You don't want to have that conversation with your mom or your dad. But he did tell his dad they were connecting on Snapchat. He also told his dad he had sent a video to Brittany, but he wouldn't go to detail on what that video was. And the mother also added that he wasn't really around Brittany a whole lot because he played a lot of sports and their schedules apparently didn't sync up. So in her opinion, it was just videos and pictures that were being exchanged back and forth. So the detective interviews victim number 8, and he said that Brittany was a new teacher that came out of nowhere. He said that she taught him math and she was referred to by the students as Miss Berry. He said that he wasn't a great student in math, but he always had an A+ in her class. And he said there was a big rumor going around that Miss Berry had allegedly given a student a blowjob after a basketball game. And shortly after she left the school, he said she remained in contact with him on Snapchat. And get this, he said that apparently the day that Brittany resigned from the school, she was in class and told the students she was going to quit, and it was because of allegations of oral sex with a student. She actually said that to the students. He then talked about a situation that occurred in August of 2024, and he said that he had just finished football practice and that he and his mom had stopped at a gas station, and once his mom went inside, that's when that Snapchat notification came up, and it said, Brittany Fortinberry requests to add you to Snapchat. And he said that's where the relationship really kind of started. He said at first they were just talking about school and things like that. He even said that Brittany mentioned at one point that she was old enough to be his mother. He said that Brittany started sending him nude pictures of her breast and admitted that he reciprocated that and would send her pictures of his penis. He said at one point, Brittany sent a picture of her butt, and the words underneath the picture said, "This is my favorite ass pic." He also said he sent Brittany a video of him, quote, jerking off, and that Brittany reciprocated by sending a video to him of her vagina squirting. So as detectives do, he's trying to find out, hey, did you notice any distinguishing marks with Brittany you wouldn't otherwise see unless you saw her actually naked? And he mentioned a spider web tattoo on her left breast. And he said she had like a red tattoo on her left hip, kind of close to her butt, and it looked like a fireball. And to tell you how sick this chick is, at one point, she sends him a video of her masturbating. He sends a video of himself to her back of himself ejaculating. And she responded to that picture of him ejaculating by saying, quote, "Good boy. He could call her anything he wanted, just not Miss Berry." He then told the detective that Brittany would pay the kids between $1 and $800 for dick pictures, and that in some of the videos she would send the boys, dick pictures would be on the wall behind her of the boys that she was having sex with. I shit you not. Unbelievable. All right, so let's talk about Nick Fortinberry, the husband of Brittany. And just a couple of things I'm going to say here. And I'm going to say this is my personal belief, but I have no direct knowledge. But as frequent as this shit was and all the facts that I just laid out before you, alleged facts from these victims, there's no world where I believe that Nick Fortinberry did not know this shit was going on. As a matter of fact, he was making threats to a lot of these kids, which proves he knew what was going on. And it didn't take detectives long to figure that out either. On March 31st of 2025, he was arrested. And I'm going to reference an article for you from People magazine. It says, an Indiana man allegedly threatened to kill a 13-year-old boy whom his wife had been sexually abusing. An investigator recently testified in court. Prosecutor in Morgan County, Indiana, alleged that Nicholas Fortinberry threatened the young teenager last year after discovering his wife, Brittany Fortinberry, a teacher, had allegedly been having group sex with the boy and several other underage boys who were students, according to documents filed in court. Brittany, 31, is facing multiple charges for child molestation, dissemination of material harmful to a minor, sexual misconduct when a minor, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Her husband, Nicholas, is facing charges for failure to report a crime and intimidation. Nicholas was aware of his wife's criminal activity and threatened the boys to stop having sex with his wife until they were older. Detective Patrick Williams of the Morgan County Sheriff's Office testified at a probable cause hearing on March 25th. Williams had interviewed both the husband and wife and revealed a threat Nicholas allegedly made to the 13-year-old boy at his Indiana home. Quote, "If you don't stop what you're doing with my wife, then I'm going to kill you in front of your family," unquote. Following that, Nicholas allegedly told the boy, quote, "Do not continue to do what you're doing with my wife," get ready for this, "until you turn 16, unquote. And the reason he referenced the 16 is that is the age of consent in Indiana. People magazine previously reported that Brittany allegedly threatened she would kill herself if the boys she was abusing had told anyone about what she was doing to them. Brittany's husband filed for divorce in February. Nicholas posted a $600 cash bond on March 31st and is free from custody. And the article ends there. So he's out of jail at the moment, but looks like he's going to have to answer for his role in all this. So let me give you the latest news on all this. Brittany Fortinberry is still in jail as of this recording on 29 charges, and that includes sexual misconduct, child molestation, and she's charged with having sex, as I mentioned, with boys as young as 13. She had a bond increase, as a matter of fact, as charges kept piling up. And with these amount of charges, Brittany Fortinberry could legit be spending the rest of her life in prison should she be convicted. And I don't disagree with that. This lady right here, in my opinion, will never stop molesting kids ever. She's that sick. The difference between her and a serial killer, in my opinion, is she doesn't kill them. She just rapes them. But the thirst is the same. And these ain't 17-year-old high school seniors and 18-year-old high school seniors. These kids are 14-year-old boys. Of all the bad teachers I've done so far, this, in my opinion, is the worst relative to her likelihood of reoffending. Just a disgusting, deplorable human being Brittany Fortinberry is. So I'm going to wrap this one up. I'll give you, of course, any news as it becomes available on this. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com, Exposed Podcast Files. I got some videos of Brittany, not the kind of videos that we discussed in here, of course, but I've got some videos of her traveling back and forth to court that I'm going to post on there. And we post all kinds of files, videos, pictures, and you also get commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, quarterly gifts, which incidentally, this week, as a matter of fact, today, as I record this, I mailed off the last of the quarterly gifts. Everything went out this week, so look for those in the next week to 2 weeks to arrive at your home if you are a top-tier global celebrity member on Patreon. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I could not do this show. Honestly, I could not do it without the support of those on the Patreon. So thank you very much. I love y'all so much. And until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.